Might be just a small group tonight. I know Julie is having a family thing she's tending to, so. But
Is it Doriandra?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Doriandra.
hi, who's that?
There's somebody lurking in the room here.
Is that
I
Miss Gibby?
recognize your voice.
Oh, nice to hear your voice. Okay, let's jump in, folks, shall we? Anybody want to do any comment or stuff we don't know about, we should know about, that you know about?
Don't get me started.
Don't get, yeah, right. All right.
I did just watch Val Hoyle's interview on Think Out Loud that took place a couple of days ago when she resigned from the Doge committee. She sounded somewhat naive. It was kind of disappointing. The Merkley has been much more outspoken.
He has been, yeah. It's been quite exciting to hear him talk. So Val Hoyle just left the conversation, or what do you mean? What did she say?
I know she was answering questions, but she had just she was invited to be a Democratic representative on the Doge committee of the House.
I see.
To provide some, ostensibly to provide some oversight of what Elon Musk is getting up to. And within a few days, or I think it was a few days, she resigned because she didn't think that anybody was taking them seriously. I think, but kind of hardly surprising.
Oh, well.
What was interesting in listening in or attending hearings on Zoom of legislative committees from Salem working through bills and things in Salem, to hear how many senators and House members sort of were assuming that federal funds would resume, because there was a lot of programs they were discussing that depended either on federal reimbursement or the flow of funds from the feds. And it was kind of strange to hear them just assuming that the money would start flowing sometime. But it was interesting there. Kind of seemed like a disconnect. Anyway, enough from me. That's all I had.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you immensely for bringing up the HB 3170 situation. That was a great catch. And Jen, to fill you in, Stephen realized that they were voting on whether or not they would put more funds into the resiliency hubs situation. So that was critical to get our voices in. We weren't sure quite what to do in terms of if the board needed to vote on a letter, but I put a letter together, and let's see, we can, Stephen has seen it, but can you all see my screen? There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's just basically we're calling on them or encouraging them to go ahead and vote yes on it, because it will be another $10 million appropriated for the project, which would be round 2 of the funding. And it was good to note that, there were 700 proposals issued and only 96 funded. So it was interesting. I looked over I'm not sure if you're reading this, Jen, it's pretty short and sweet, but looked over who were the recipients, and it was super interesting. Our only local groups that got the grant were Black Thistle, which is, I was wondering what they were doing with it. I don't see any updates on their website or anything, but that's pretty exciting. And then the Lane Education Group got it, which was a weird. I thought it was a Bethel School District. It kind of had some weird wording to it. But yeah, it was good.
Is it like ESD,
Um,
Education Service District?
that's it. Yes. Yeah. So that may be because I did hear that they were putting some in near Bethel, which was good. But yeah, not really anything immensely close to our neighborhood except for Black Thistle. But I don't really know too much about them. Do you know, Jen, like where they would put that?
So I mean, because was this the grant where they're getting like the hub
Yep,
item?
the big
Yeah.
trailers. Yeah.
I don't know. They're I wonder if it's like out of not Whitebird or something, but maybe
Mm.
I'm not sure. Because this actually the thing that I am concerned about is the potential for an ice storm this Thursday. And I had a really good meeting with Mariko from Calc.
What is Calc?
The Community Alliance of Lane County. They have the building at 481 Blair.
Okay.
And I met with them because I'm gonna host the co-ed meeting there in March. But she's just really great about how like summer sometimes we have a cooling center, the market's closed or whatever. And it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, could we ever maybe use your porch or something, so we're not trying to do this also intense and stuff. And so I have to see because I have there's a collaborator for the co-ed meeting tomorrow. And if it activates, like I'm gonna shadow this time, so I don't know if I will be at the emergency operations center for the next 4 days if we get an ice storm. But if we don't, then I might try to like at least go bring hot chocolate down there or to WJ or something because not having any kind of resources in the last ice storm nearby was awful. And then folks were at night, they were getting they were out from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And nothing was open, absolutely nothing. And so but also I was like, you haven't talked to them at all. I don't think they use their offices all that much anymore. I think everyone's kind of doing the work from home thing. But they are cool and in a great location. And so might be worth trying to make friends with them.
Yeah, that's
stuff like that.
a great point. I'm a little worried about this storm. I'm going to go ahead and activate our internet stations at Bruns and the Eugene Mission, but luckily it doesn't seem like this could be a long thing. It's just Thursday and Friday is what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, and it's supposed to snow hopefully a little bit before the potential ice comes, which might be good because it might keep the ice from forming like on the actual ground. Well, and it's maybe not. I think they were calling for maybe like half an inch instead of like 4 inches like last time.
Right.
So yeah, but it's it's kind of one of those things where you're like, all right, we'll be ready for the next time, and I'm like, this is my last box of pasta I'm cooking right now. I'm like so not ready, like.
Right. Do you want to give us go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, just a quick thing on language. I've been in meetings of the House Committee of Climate, Energy and the Environment and the Senate Committee on Energy and the Environment. And the Republicans seem to be taking aim at the word resiliency and resilience because it's automatic being associated with climate stuff. And the word that they seem to accept as reliability, which is gives them the idea that they can support stuff that's keeping transmission lines. I mean, I was reminded of this by talking about the ice storm. Keeping transmission lines from falling down when they get covered with ice and stuff. That's under the category of reliability. It's not addressing the possibly what might be the causes of the ice storm in the first place. But anyway, just a bit on language. I wouldn't suggest we do anything because all the drafts that we have resilience hubs and stuff like that. But just bear in mind, when you're talking to anybody that might be MAGA, they're more receptive to reliability as a concept than resiliency. So it's we're into the George Orwell phase of this at this point.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that grant is named the Resilience Hub, so it's
And it also applied to there was a Republican talking about biomass, biochar, and say how great it was. And he managed to work in a thread in his presentation about biochar being recommended for use in the Midwest to reduce the amount of topsoil that washes off and runs down to the Gulf of America. You could see how people kind of wince as he said that, but the audience was a bit too far away to really. Is that spelled with a K at the end? Check Google Maps. Understand they've got the correct spelling.
Yeah, I think Google Calendar just lost a whole section of important holidays too. I haven't looked up.
Yeah.
Yet. Right. Yeah. Where things are being rewritten. So, hi, Joanna.
Hi.
How are you tonight?
I'm hanging in there. I'm listening to you guys talking about all this orange head shit, and I'm just trying to stay away from it. It's entirely too depressing. Not that staying away from it is going to help anything, but it's just too much. I looked at the agenda for tonight, and I don't want to intrude on that, but I went to a friendly area neighborhood meeting the other night, and I sent you an email afterwards about people getting or having FRS or GMRS radios, and how cheap they are, and how if we find enough people in our neighborhood who actually have one of those radios, we can practice communicating with each other and getting emergency communication started in our neighborhood. I really, I'm beating a dead horse in a way, but I really think it's overwhelmingly important that we start that soon.
I so agree, and I apologize. I was writing you back, but I was trying to get some more information. I've been looking for like an operational grant that would let us just buy a ton of them, and then we would pass them out similar to how we did with our AARP event that you were at with us, Joanna. So I've been trying to get something in the hopper so we could really push that forward, because I can't agree with you more. It's so essential. And to go a step further, I went to the CERT assembly last week. You won an award. So
I did?
I think so. Yeah. They were talking about, they were recognizing everyone's work, and the part of NCOMS, I believe you've got something there waiting for you, but it was a good meeting. They played with some FRS radios, and other ham radio folks were there with their equipment. So they did some exercising with that. But, the new, Tiffany Brown was there. She's the new Lane County emergency manager. She was great to chat with. And, some of it was a little sad. The long-term member, Carlos, is resigning, I guess, from his post. He was the lead for the Whitaker, but he's so frustrated, and he said he was kind of protesting or resigning because as a sign of protest that we're so disorganized in the county and Eugene that CERT is so underused. And so I don't know, it was a bummer, but I think the takeaway of the meeting with those new city folks there was to try to get some more resources for CERT and actually begin to deploy us more rather than just not use this huge body of skills. But anyway, that was a quick takeaway of the meeting. So it was,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, I don't know if it will help at all, but I do know that the fan group, when they, when they got off the ground, because it started out with just, 3 or 4 people, and they just kept plugging away at it. But they got a grant through the city for their radios, and I don't know if there's any money at the city for that. I don't know is that me reverberating here or what?
We're having a tough time with audio tonight. I keep muting myself to see if that's the problem. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Stephen and Jen both have mutes. Let me mute myself and you keep speaking, Joanne, and we'll see if that helps. Go ahead.
Okay. So here I am, blah, 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 blah.
It helped.
It helped. Interesting. Okay. So maybe the current speaker needs to have their mic unmuted so that it helps, because it is kind of a little odd to be hearing that. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what the city has at this point as far as grant money has, because I know that FAN got their money several years ago now, but it was really nice for them to get that equipment. And I'm only pushing what they're doing because I am now part of the rotating group for running the net. And I think I mentioned to you that I was dumbfounded because I had tried using my FRS radio, and across town it was nothing, of course. But when I went to GMRS, we could hear each other perfectly well, and it wasn't on a repeater or anything. It was just GMRS. And for $35 for a 10-year license, I think most of our people, not everybody, especially in our neighborhood, could afford it, but enough that we could get something going, I think.
I agree. That sounds really manageable. Thank you so much for leading that, and keep reminding us, because there's a lot going on, but yeah, absolutely invaluable to have that.
I told the fan group, I said, I keep trying and they're pushing along, but I cannot even begin to believe how much that group is doing. So I applaud all of you. That's just an enormous amount of work that you guys are doing.
Yes, indeed. I met
suggested that in addition to having the health and safety committee, that at some point we initiate a separate MCOM group. So that is entirely our main focus.
That is a great idea to be, yes, that would be really smart, because then that committee could really function and then work with this committee, and yeah, we could actually get somewhere. So good advice.
There's also, through the community organizations active in disaster, we're going to be looking at the Lifeline meetings. And so there's going to be a communications lifeline, which we're a little bit, I think, further away from than the food shelter one. But that could also that may end up looking more like 1 or 2 people from Whitaker kind of participating in the broader network, you know.
Jen, do you want to take this minute and fill us in on your steps with COAD?
If I knew him alive, yeah. So, hopefully, Durandra, you got an invitation to the new member meeting next week on the 19th, but I'm guessing you didn't, so I will write that down to forward that to you.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a meeting invite. I just actually got the actual invite for that one too.
And will you remind us what COAD stands for?
Yes. So The COAD is the Community Organizations Active in Disaster. And what it is there's a formal process by which the county during an emergency management situation will activate through their emergency operations system and center a call for nonprofit support. And so the COAD is just a network of online nonprofits, and being a member of the COAD doesn't mean you like are obligated to respond always, but it means that you've been plugged in and you kind of will get the message of, hey, that we have this ask of, do you have a, Wi-Fi hookup anywhere? Or where can we talk about where these are? Or like, who might have a generator? Who might have food? Who might have any of these things that might be useful in a disaster? Particularly like the most recent activations of it were things like the Cedar Creek evacuation, which was like a whole month long, but resources were so depleted throughout the state that the COAD ended up just running that evacuation for most of the time. During the ice storm, trying to coordinate deliveries of different types of services, and if people were stranded and if they needed non-urgent medical transport kind of things. And so I just have come on as one of the organizers of it. And so on March 18th, we'll have a Eugene Springfield area meeting for folks of all of the lifelines, but kind of just for this geographical area. The other geographical focuses are Florence, Oak Ridge, Cottage Grove, Junction City, and McKenzie, and probably one more that I'm forgetting right now. But so that way there can be kind of like both a localized and a countywide response. And also if a organization is heavily impacted in one of the regions, then someone from someone else can maybe come in and help as well. And so, yeah, we're just kind of getting things going with convening folks again. So there'll be a new member meeting and the general meeting both next week, and I will send those invites to you. And then we'll be doing a Eugene Springfield area one in March. And it's really just kind of like, it also kind of functions as a grassroots network because, I met Mariko from Calc to talk about, using this Calc space for that meeting. But then we're talking about like, hey, if it's not a COAD thing, could I maybe use the ports to do distribution or warming if needed, and then everyone's having these conversations. So that's really what like the kind of benefit of it all is. And so.
It's awesome. Thank you. That's really exciting. You're the right person for that work. That's great.
But now we only have 3 months to do it.
Oh, right. That 6-month contract, and now it's
1 year. It was 1 year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's great. I mean, I do this stuff all the time, and I'm very grateful for your support because you've been doing so much of this, and I totally never made it to my cert field day and only like watch half the thing. So I'm like not as plugged into that community as I'd like to be, and all of the comms and all of the things. So, but this group has been really inspirational in trying to pursue that work, and also gives me the confidence to try to think that we can be successful at it, even if sometimes we are a little disorganized and get our comm trainings on.
Yes, good points. I mean, we suit up and we show up and we do our best, and we're doing something. So that's amazing. So, okay. All right. I just wanted to give a quick update to y'all about how these federal grants freezes are going to be hindering us. It's very unfortunate. Right now we have a CDC Public Health Equity Infrastructure grant, and that's the grant that pretty much keeps salaries paid or partial salaries paid and keeps things running. And then we also have one it's interesting, it's funded by the tobacco prevention section of Public Health Equity, but we use it for our disaster resiliency hub work, or not hub, excuse me, disaster resiliency program that we do. So those are interesting grants that can be pretty much in peril. The tobacco prevention one is a state pass-through grant, so it's very iffy, but the CDC one is a federal grant, and so I've been just paused trying to figure out if we have lost that, and I think we have, just because of the structure of it. So that's going to be a really significant blow to us. We'll lose about 25,000 in funding that we needed for this year. So that's going to be interesting. The big one that we're trying to start here, the Healthy Homes, is state funded. It was an HB bill, so it is all state funded, but that one seems a little scary too, because we won the round one funding, which is the first grant biennium, but the round two and round three do have the capacity to be federally funded. So I'm just not sure what's going to happen. I feel like we just have to get started quickly and hope for the best, but it has been really interesting seeing grants portals shut down and seeing a lot of the things that were on my desktop in terms of adding to our disaster resiliency program just be in this strange space of limbo. So it's about as clear as mud, and that's all we have. So it's challenging. Go ahead, Stephen.
There's hardly encouragement, but we have friends who have very few resources expecting things like tax refunds and various assistance things to come through. And in several cases, stuff has not arrived that was expected. So it's trying to figure out why people aren't getting what they were expecting. Could easily be explained by things like you were just discussing there. So it may not just be organizations like ours, it could be individuals too who are starting to get impacted by the freeze on federal funding of stuff.
That's terrifying to hear that it's affecting individuals. That was what it was promised to not do, but I don't really believe much from what I'm hearing. So I'm sorry to hear that. That's going to be devastating because, yeah, we have so many vulnerable people. So I wonder if it'll affect.
Gibby was out this afternoon taking somebody that we know shopping to get her basic supplies before any storm arrives, basic foodstuffs. So it definitely we should be aware that people may be being affected by cutoffs of money that they're expecting.
That's terrifying.
And there has been, I haven't totally verified this, but We Are Sharp is a food security group that serves Oak Ridge, and they'd been partnering with the mission and picking up food from them. And apparently they are not, because the mission is experiencing some sort of federal funding something. And so it was from the one side I heard that the mission stated that it was trickle down from the executive orders.
Yikes. Yeah, it's.
And they were doing 200 food boxes and 200 meals a week up in Oak Ridge. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying. My dad lives on Social Security alone, and he's in the St. Vinny's housing that we have so graciously all over Eugene. And yeah, I keep wondering how that's going to affect that, because that's subsidized by HUD, which is completely federal. So, I mean, we could see some really radical times ahead. And yeah, it boggles the mind. So, okay. What do you think we dive into this Healthy Homes plan? I just really wanted to get your valuable feedback on a couple items. Let's see, let me grab this. Here we go. In thinking through the policy, let me share this with you folks here. Here we go. It's trying to get, oh, now we can see it. Okay. Let me scroll to the top. Can you all see that okay? Let's see. I can't see you now because I'm looking at that. Yes. Yeah, everybody can see?
I'm seeing it now.
Okay, perfect.
This is seeing a limited view. I see at the top it's cut off costs or create delays with paper checks. Then I see program procedures. Then I see a paragraph and homes outside the Whitaker and then confidentiality. So it's not a full screen that I'm viewing here.
Let's see.
I'm seeing the same thing.
Okay, let me see. Why is this? All right, let's try it again. And, oh, that is a bummer.
You need to scroll section by section down.
How is that view now?
That's the top of the document. It
Good,
stops at the fifth line of WCC insurance. It stops.
Perfect. Now it's synchronizing. Okay, great. So I'll just scroll through it with you together. Some of it is really standard. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Is contracting and insurance. This has been a miasma of nonsense, but we're finally to this point. The backstory is that the grantors were requiring us to carry this extremely expensive pollution liability, which would have burned through about $12,000 over the life cycle. So they worked that around, and it's pretty simple. Our licensed contractors are going to go in and do the healthy home assessment on every project and then create a work plan. When they encounter any signs of mold, asbestos, or lead, then that portion of the project is going to go to a big company that has this expensive pollution liability. So that's pretty simple. Moving on down here, this is all pretty much internal stuff for the grant.
Good job figuring that out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it literally was weeks of going back and forth, and we had to get 5 new policies. It was just outrageous. But okay, let's see. Reimbursements. This is kind of bookkeeping stuff, but this doesn't really pertain to us. But let's see. Here we go. This is my big question here. Let's see. Let me get through here. Okay. Homes outside of the Whitaker. This is something we ran into when I was doing that OREM grant, which was the rent assistance for people. We want to absolutely prioritize the Whitaker. That's what the grant is for. But I think just like in the OREM grant, we're going to run into cases where our neighboring communities will apply or need support. And given this is a 3-year project, I think that we should potentially say yes, on a need case-to-case project. So this is something I'll have the board vote on, but I would just welcome that feedback from you all. Does everybody agree? I mean, we want to prioritize the Whitaker, but do everything else we can too around us. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think also, were you talking about like doing each of the things in phases? Like all the heat pumps, or no, it's by house by house?
Yeah, I'll show you that next in the application. Yeah, I decided that's nuts. We can't, so we're going to just be moving through like let me get back over here. Oh, it's so hard to see everybody. Let's see, that's this section, right? So once an applicant passes the eligibility criteria, then the WCC contractor is going to perform a healthy homes assessment to examine the property condition, scope of work, and project feasibility. Then the contractor passes that back to me. if it's all grant compliant and what is needed in the house, we can check off our boxes, then it goes, then we need a project coordinator, which will be me right now, but that person would go and assess the steps to prepare for the renovations and then liaison with the Eugene Mission volunteer team to schedule the prep work. Then after renovations are completed, the Eugene Mission will come back and finish like moving furniture back into place. They'll do painting or finish work. And then there's certain, we've got to do this grant satisfaction survey, blah, blah, blah. So let's see. This is a big one here, this confidentiality. I'm wondering what y'all think about that. Since the structure of grant doesn't impose financial limits on projects completed on one dwelling, I'm really recommending that the project costs per dwelling are not shared with the owner, renter, or landlord. This would prevent equity issues and limit public approval or disapproval, but rather just focus solely on deliverables as related to our work structure. And my thinking with this is that, you know, Joe down the street gets upset because Ann's house actually turned into a massive thing because we found more that we had to fix the same thing that Joe had, right? And I just think that this makes sense. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think if you actually did it, like, think of even just with a heat pump, you know, and I think you're probably going to buy all the same heat pumps, but it might be easier to explain it. And maybe if someone has a larger house, they might need a larger heat pump, and so it's the same thing, but it doesn't. The grant is for getting the thing done, and it's not about, well, they got a $3,500 one, and mine was only $3,000, so do I get that extra $500?
That's it.
Because if they need stuff and it falls within the grant, they're going to get it.
Exactly.
You know, so.
Exactly. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Here's one. If this is kind of along those same lines, if Joe's house, we find that there's massive structural damage because the mold has eaten the subfloor, and then we have to fix that, and then we have to go deeper and deeper and fix the studs, or, you know, then one of those kind of situations, I think that the board we'd have to get all that from the contractor, bring it back to the board, and then, you know, I mean, the board will have to vote on whether we're going to do that type of thing. And if, you know, we may have to move the goalposts a little bit. We have to say, okay, no, we actually can't do the mold, but we can do the HVAC system type of thing. So we may scale it back. Okay, these are more internal stuff.
So, Doriandra,
Yeah.
Contracting, those are called change orders.
Say that
And
one more time.
In contracting, that can be called a change order.
Okay.
And so if you just have it in the MOU that you have with the landlord or whatever, and I guess this is where maybe not disclosing how much things cost, but you could do it in terms of hours, maybe.
Okay.
You know, like that if there's a change order in excess of 10% of the overall project, it needs to be approved. Change order, sorry.
Change order, right. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Good term. Okay, that's really helpful. Right, it could be a percentage. Okay, consider percentage.
Yeah, because so like when they do the assessment, the contractor should develop, in conjunction with the project manager, a scope of work.
Yeah, right.
And so then it's a change to that, and that's what gets agreed on. And so then if you let out the mold monster, then that requires a change order to the scope of work, and that has to be a formalized process. Has to be approved. And
Makes good sense.
yeah, what happens if it is just in excess of what the grant can cover?
We can't. This is the funky thing, but we can to the extent that when the applicants to this grant went in. Some of them just went crazy and they checked every single conceivable thing, right? Because there is a larger list of things that can be done. But people that check those lists are big groups like Habitat for Humanity, right? Where they have in-house builders, they're used to it and they can do it. So what our grantors have said is that because we stayed in the categories that the contractors I could find that wanted to be passionately committed to the project could do, right? That if we run into problems like you just mentioned that require bigger scope, I can change the work plan formally and take it back to the grantors, but we can't just go in and put in a new foundation, right? It all has to go back to the grantor. So I'm just going to keep all body parts crossed that we don't hit that problem, but I'm sorry. I had my COVID booster today, my flu shot, and a shingles. It's all starting to hit.
I think you're trying to say we may very well vey, right? That's what you're trying for?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Stephen. Language help. Right.
There was a conversation at one of the House Energy Committee meetings today about re-upping the heat pump program that's been so incredibly successful, and quite a few heat pump installers were talking about the condition of some of the buildings that they go in to do heat pumps, and heat pumps seem to solve a lot of problems. And there was conversation about mold, and then there was conversation about the role of dehumidifiers to slow down the growth of mold. So it was definitely a topic of conversation at the heat pump re-up bill. So it sounded very complicated, but it sounded like there were lots of very well qualified contractors out there. So I hope we've got some good ones.
Yeah, we do. There's some really good pros that know how to pick up the toxic stuff. So,
And I think that if there can be, and this is maybe just a little in the weeds, but like have sort of a plan for middle of the road. Like we discovered this mold. We cannot rip up this entire floor, rebuild your entire house from scratch. But what we can do is we can treat it and seal it, and sorry, like
right.
replacing the vapor barrier though is still going to be a lot easier than replacing the foundation of something,
Right. That's true. I think that these two general contractors will be able to, because a lot of this is just Swahili for me. I mean, I I can't imagine me having to work this out with the homeowner. So we have, thankfully, obviously we have the contractor in the middle that can say, this is what, this is the middle road, or this is the scorched earth way. We can't afford the scorched earth. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I'm I think I told you guys I'm going to start with the co-op, our Blair East Blair, because they've got so many units in there that just need great upgrades, and that will really be kind of a training wheel for us because it is a WCC project from way back, and I think that's just a really sweet way and place to start. So we'll learn a lot with that. But the last piece that's really vexing me is, we were all so passionate about creating this memorandum of understanding that would prohibit a landlord to just say, great, now I've got all new doors, windows, HVACs, you're getting your rent raised, right? So I went to the WCC lawyer, and hundreds of dollars later, we've got a great legal document. But in going through it, I realized that I had overlooked a really essential part, which was that the MOU was talking about this, asking for this grace period of, or mandatory period of the life of the biennium, of whenever somebody started whenever their project started, they would get 3 years from that date forward. and this, of course, she did such great work in parsing out, the legalities of that so that we weren't just making this blanket statement. So the document is amazing, but it hit me later that it could be a barrier for some landlords based on the scope of work we're doing on the house, right? For instance, Joe's landlords are getting all new doors, all new windows, HVAC systems, all this stuff. Anne's landlord is getting a wheelchair ramp for her wheelchair, right? So suddenly I've realized, like, wow, we have this value issue. And so I'm really stuck with this because I mean, how do we do this? How do we, because then we're breaking our kind of confidentiality about the price of projects, which was to hold that equity point. So now how do we, do we assign it? Okay, we give a dollar amount, like if we do 5,000 of upgrades, you have to protect the rent for a year. If we do 15, you have to do 2 years. If we do, right?
So my thought is that if you are a landlord and you are participating in this for your tenant, these are likely legally required upgrades that you could otherwise not afford to do. So it's impacting the quality of the life of the renter.
Mhm.
Like if there's mold, or if they need ADA, maybe you're not legally required, but it sure would be nice if you did,
Mhm.
And if any project is probably not going to be less than $5,000,
Correct.
and that is $100 a month increase in rent for, 36 months is 3 years. So
Mhm.
$1,300. So if they're getting that value, ideally no one's raising rent more than $100 a month.
Mhm.
I think, like, not raising the rent on the current tenant, and then also just trying to keep things market fair, affordable, not even fair market. I think that's why I love starting with a co-op, because none of this is an issue here.
Exactly.
Um,
We're in
but
safe territory there.
I mean, I think there's also the potential that you're going to get more applicants than there is funding.
Hmm.
And so there is still a little discretion in the rubric as far as awarding folks.
Hmm.
So maybe just don't work with any landlords that are assholes. No, like, to the extent possible. You know, I think that even just saying that has to be a condition of participating, my worry is that landlords would not participate for that reason if they are not good intentioned.
Me too.
But I think that, yeah, certainly with the ADA stuff, like, ideally they're not upgrading it for an ADA resident and then going to evict them,
Right. Right.
But I think I wouldn't couch it much. I would say,
Okay.
like, you're not allowed to, because are folks going to have to pull permits to do this work?
Oh. In some cases.
So the Lane County has, like, what, a 3% increase on rent limit per year, I think, unless a permit is pulled.
Oh dear God, permits. Oh,
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
no, it's okay. No, the thing that I read for the state of Oregon, which I guess doesn't apply, we need to be more specific for Eugene, but there were certain exclusions. Like I think the wording was that it can't be raised 10% or anything above 10% per year. But the exclusions were that if the property was older than 2005, I think. So there were these weird little exclusions, like loopholes where people could get out of it. And I think that was our intention, was to just get as, and the lawyer has structured her document quite differently. Hers is more along the lines of that it can't be 30%. They have to stay at the level of the applicant's income. The rent can't go higher than 30% of that.
Ah,
So she came at it from a different angle, which is, I think, smarter because we're working from that AMI index.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it poses a lot. God, the permits, Jen. Oh, Jesus. I hadn't really even.
The good news is I don't, anything that's not structural, you don't need permits for.
Okay.
Um,
Blood pressure returning. Right.
ramps, anything that's below 6 inches, you don't need permits for, and ramps that aren't permanently attached to the house, which is a funny, there's a way you can do that it is kind of permanently attached to the house, but not. And I don't know about the heat pump because oftentimes you do have to touch the electrical box to put in its own split breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, like the folks who install that are really good at that. Like I got my heat pump through eWeb, and I never did. I filled out a half-page application, and they came and did. And that's all I know as the homeowner, you know.
That's right.
So, and it was like included in the price, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't bad. So, so don't panic about that. I think that might affect some of the rental things. I think because we'll know people's income, the tenant's income.
Yep.
And sorry, my phone is about to die. We can just have the landlord sign and agree that they will not raise the rent above whatever that 30% is,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what it is. So for 3 years.
Okay, that's a really good point. Just keeping it as any upgrade is a valuation of the 3-year agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got a hand up, Joanna. What are you thinking?
I do. I've got a Valley Radio Club tech and training meeting in 4 minutes, so I'm going to have to leave this
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, well-
sorry. Keep up the good work, people, and keep your heads high because this is just so pathetic. It's just so pathetic.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Have a good next meeting.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I've been listening intently and I have not heard any of the advice that Genevieve's giving that is at all concerning me. So I would raise my hand if I hear anything that doesn't sound sensible. But the one thing I was going to raise was what happens if people have to move out of their place while the work's being done? Have we thought through that?
Yes, we have. I talked to some of the local insurance carriers in town, and it looks like, and it's a tough one because our grants, there's no allowable relocation of people, right? So that was a huge head scratcher. And so going back to, talking to like my insurance agent and a couple other carriers, there's usually policy language that allows temporary housing while major renovations are going on. So my hope is that would be the case, because otherwise we don't have money to do it. So it's going to be really frustrating because it will be on the landlords to trigger their policy for this and relocate their tenants. So yeah, it's a very good question, one that's kept me up at night.
If the building is, if it's owner occupied and it's not a rental property with a landlord, is one of the needs to check whether the whether the owner occupier of the property has an insurance policy that has that provision, or how do we handle that situation where there's no landlord there?
Well, yeah, I mean, you bring a good point. You could have owner occupied instances where people are not carrying, you know, I don't want to say adequate, but not extensive home insurance. And, I think that would have to be on this case by case basis, because this grant is kind of limited. For instance, the fringe benefits that pay for staff taxes and stuff isn't even enough to cover. It's such a low 11.5%. So that's just an example of how this grant is really tricky. And I think in the case that you just talked about, Stefan, it would be like, okay, well, now we are going to have to pull money out of our indirect expense fund, which is also small. And, so it's literally just going to be every applicant is going to prove an entire range of issues that will just have to be massaged through. So, Jen?
I don't know. I haven't looked extensively at the grant, but I am guessing that the way it is structured is that kind of each unit, you did an estimate for how much an ADA improvement would be, things like that. If safe relocation of the tenant for a couple nights is part of that, what that project cost is, I think that you could offer up to the per diem rate, which is like $150 a night to a hotel. And I think you're just gonna have to be really careful in the assessment phase. Don't worry, my phone's gonna die soon, so we can eat food soon. Included it in as part of the unit cost, but like being very, very careful with those initial assessments to be like, talk to the contractors and be like, give us the worst case scenario, and what is this, and then triage. And if something seems more likely to open up a moldy can of worms and require housing for someone for 3 months, then that might just be beyond
the scope. Yep.
what we can do, and it's hi, we're really sorry,
Yep. That's why I put that right of refusal in there. I mean, some stuff we just won't be able to do. I mean, my dream is that we're just like basically outfitting everybody with energy efficient new systems. And like that's why partly too, I kept our project goals tight and simple so that we wouldn't hit this massive thing. So yeah, good point.
And it's like, because I know like the heat pumps, they're also the most straightforward unit. They're the most straightforward installation. Who needs to move out of their house for it? Probably. Worst case scenario, it's a night or two, but then you are still looking at like $100 add-on cost, and it's not, a crisis. And I think with some of the abatement or renovations and stuff like that, that might be a cost, but you're also saving a lot on labor with the mission folks doing some of those things. So that might, and having a good crew of 10 people who can, kind of help bust that work out and aren't contractors, so they're not billing for hours and dragging it out as long as they can. I think that you'll be okay doing this a little bit case by case. And, the same thing, I think with like, I would almost just open it in sequences, like close applications once you get 50, go through those, triage those, see if any are just like, no, some are really straightforward, get the ball rolling. And then once those are done, open the application cycle again and, just kind of do it that way. So that way folks aren't waiting forever, and, and you'll have an opportunity then to kind of see what comes in and what the requests are.
Yep.
And you'll probably get your year's goal worth of folks, of qualifying applicants that are not a huge, terrifying mess.
Really good advice.
And then, and then you can kind of like, with the second cycle, you can pick the 5 people who maybe weren't in the first cycle, but that were good, add them, open it again, take the next 15 people, or however, you know what I mean? Like however you're doing it.
Yeah.
But I would limit your flow of information because you are going to have to make decisions. And there's going to be an expense to the contractors doing those assessments.
Exactly. Yeah. That's going to be $100 an hour. That's what we're doing. Right.
But even getting folks that far is actually a pretty big benefit to them too.
Right.
If they are renters, they can take that to their landlord and be like, hi,
Right.
And so I think that you're doing a really good job of trying to figure out how to make it equitable and
Thank you.
but
Thank you.
coming down the line. And construction is just construction, and it's always gonna go sideways one way or another.
Well, now too, we have no idea with tariffs and steel tariffs now. Like every cost could.
And if you order all of them right now and just store them somewhere.
Tempted, totally tempted. Yeah. Go ahead, Stephen. Oh, you're muted, dear. You're muted, Stephen. Hi, Travis.
How about now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I prepared all the ingredients for dinner, and my beloved Gibby has just cooked everything and brought me a wonderful plate of food. I don't want to make everyone jealous, so I'm going to turn my camera off. But
Okay.
I'll stay on the call. I'm still here, but just turn it off.
Okay.
And I am going to hop off
Okay.
because it is time for me to eat food. But
All right. Hey,
If-
Jen, I want to put this in the chat for you real quick. This is my draft application. And like at another time, would you be so kind as to take a look through it and just send me any feedback, because I really value your input.
yeah, I'll email you the invite to the co-ed thing, and you email me that also.
Sounds good. Perfect. All right. Bon appetit.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Bye-bye. Hey, Travis, I'm glad you're here.
Hi.
I so apologize. I don't think I sent you the agenda or the invite, and I'm
No,
sorry.
you did. I got the agenda. I got an email. I got the agenda. I got the invite and the Google Meetings link, but the Google Meetings link wasn't working from the Facebook page or from the meeting. Thea gave me the link, and it was a different link than what's.
Oh, yeah, it was a different link. Yeah, we have no social media person right now, so we didn't post this meeting, and that's what I mean. I'm sorry that you didn't get it. You're late. I'm sorry, but thank you so much for joining. We're just like diving into the Healthy Homes project, and
Oh, you bet. Oh, well, I think you did. Is this the? Oh my
This
God! Am I at the wrong meeting?
the general meeting is tomorrow night. This is the public health and safety meeting.
Oh my God! Okay, I'm at the wrong meeting. Okay,
That's okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I would love to. Can I go ahead and send you a couple things though from this meeting? Because as you know, I would so value your perspective.
Sure.
That would be awesome. Okay, good.
Yeah,
All right.
no problem.
And then we'll see you again tomorrow night, right?
Yep. Yeah. Tomorrow night I can't make it. Tomorrow I've got another meeting at 6:30, I believe.
Okay.
So I might be able to put you guys in an earbud into my ear so I can kind of follow along. But
Okay.
I got totally, because for some reason I always thought the meetings were on Tuesdays. So I double booked my meetings.
Oh, that's okay. Do you have 5 minutes? Can I talk through something with you while you're here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was in it for the long run.
Okay, I was so interested. Thea was going to come tonight, but she's not feeling good, and I really wanted to kind of get yours and Thea's take from the landlord part of things. Right? Are you a landlord?
Yeah, I've got a few rentals. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, we were just talking as a group about this MOU thing, and the lawyer has given me a pretty good draft, but we were talking about my concern that, say one tenant's landlord receives, let's say 5,000 in repairs, right? And then another tenant's landlord receives closer to 20,000 on that unit. It occurred to me that this MOU that we've got now from the lawyer could be a barrier in terms of, would a landlord want to sign this thing agreeing not to raise rent if the value of their house, the work done on the house was much lower than, say, somebody down the street? Would that hinder you, or would you just be?
Well, I mean, I was supportive of a fairly robust MOU. I think that it might be smart to have a scale of what the MOU says. I mean, $5,000 obviously it's not nothing, but it's not gonna, $5,000 generally isn't gonna sell a house better. I mean, it could, depending on what it is, I suppose, but um I, I would have to hear the ideas of what the MOU was. I know that the ideas were being bounced around as maybe a limit to how much they could raise the rent per year, and possibly some sort of um, length commitment that they wouldn't kick them out, or turn it over. That is a sticky one for me. I don't know what the lawyer said, but you don't know what happens day to day. Even if they're a landlord, they're human, so they can get sick. They could have a family emergency where their kid becomes houseless and needs to have a house, and they prioritize a family member into their home, and that stuff happens. There are tenant protections against those kind of things, even for a good reason. Landlords now have to follow the law, and the law is that they would get 2 months, I believe, 2 months of rent, which is helpful to help someone on their way. And it has to be, I believe, 90 days. But that being said, I think more probably the lawyer probably would say similar, more feasible is a percent rent increase MOU.
That's what we chose, and that's partly too because of, I mean, you had spoken at one of our meetings just about, like, and I know from Thea, like, sometimes tenants, you don't want to be locked into situations, like they could have problems with mental health, or there could be, drug abuse, and so, like, we didn't want to make it so that the tenant, the landlord is forced to keep the tenant in there under unreasonable or unsafe conditions. The way that it's set up is that the landlord agrees to not raise the rent above the 30% mark of the tenant's income.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
So that was that kind of a lawyer that came up with that.
Yeah, that's our WCC lawyer. Yeah, I just took what we wanted as a group back to her, and then she formulated this legal document, and it's pretty good. There's a couple revisions, but I think we're going to go ahead and use it. It just, I was so interested.
So let's I'm kind of a visual person, a little bit more than verbal, but in terms of understanding what that entails. So 30% above the income of the tenant. Is that what you said? So
Yeah.
if a tenant's rent, or sorry, if a tenant's income is say $1,000 or $2,000, let's say 1,000 because that's a square number, is $1,000 a month, the landlord couldn't raise the rent more than $333. Is that what that's saying?
Yeah, I think you're right. The actual
that doesn't make any sense to me, because if that's a yearly increase, you would have to have an extremely expensive rental to even be able to legally raise it over $300 in 1 year anyway, because the city and the state have mandated a cap of rent raises, which I believe the states was 10%.
Yep.
And then the city went down to 8%. Or okay, I'm a little rusty on my number on the law right now, but basically there's something about an 8% cap within the city, and that might be just straight up 8%. It might be 5% plus the plus inflation up to 8% and no more than 8%. Well, 8% of a $2,000 rental is less than $200. So I would have to read it on paper, or do you have it written on paper so that you could read it to me?
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. So affordability, this is the document, means the maintenance of monthly rental rates for the property that do not exceed 30% of the gross monthly income of low income residents. So let's see, okay, hold on here. I'm going to the other section. Oh God, it's so long and unwieldy. There was one other statement that just says that that's what the landlord will agree to keep. Sorry, goodness. There it is. Duration of, or for this MOU, the landlord shall maintain affordability for a period of 3 years from the date that improvements agreed to Exhibit A are completed. So yeah, it's really interesting because I thought she was going to go with that 10% that's part of the legal, state requirement, but instead she chose to do this 30% of gross monthly income, which makes sense because the program is an AMI based program. So it needs some improvement, but
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it needs improvement. I still actually am not quite grasping what that is saying.
right.
Is that's not saying a percent raise based on the rent. That's saying a percent raise based on
Income.
Amount raised based on the percent of their income.
Right. Stephen, you got your hand up. What do you got? Are you finding a way to explain this?
I could hear a discrepancy between the two calculations. I think Travis is interpreting the wording as saying the increase shall not be more than 30% of income. So he gave the example of $1,000 income and the increase not being more than 300. But the language that you read and the language that we discussed earlier in the meeting was that no increase shall raise the rent above a level which is equivalent of 30% of the income. So it's the increase that we're talking about, or the effect of the rent after the increase, not the amount of the increase that the language was suggesting, based upon what you read.
Oh boy. Okay, Stephen, since it sounds like you actually have a grasp on what's being said. Can you give a number? Could you give a number example of a lower income person's an example of their income versus what their rent is and what the cap would be for a rent raise then?
Well, let's use the $1,000 income number, even though it means that the rents are going to be very, very low. But that was your example, 1,000 income. If the rent before the work was done was $280 a month, then after the work has been done, the landlord can't raise the rent more than $20 because $20 would take it up to the 30% cap, just based on that basic mathematics. So
Okay.
it's not saying you can go from 280 to 580, saying you can go from 280 to 301 or 300.
Yeah,
It's-
okay, I think Travis was talking about it the other way. The rent was 1,000, but say the person makes. But
No,
I
I think
I get it.
Stephen got it, and
Yeah, I get it.
I do understand that a little bit better. Um I would have to kind of see it on paper and do some math, some real actual closer to, there's not many rents less than 1,200 per month. There are people that fluctuate in the community from people that are going to be getting this service are likely going to be making somewhere in that region of 1,000 to 2,500 a month or something. I just made that up, but
Mhm.
it and then to see, you know, if they're paying 1,400 a month and they make 2,000, then um if they make if they're paying 1,400 a month and they're paying 2,000, that's crazy to even say that, but
Mhm.
that's I guess probably reality in some cases, and in some cases they're paying for a bedroom within a $1,400 home. But if they're well, I guess that brings up another factor. What if there
Just
are
a sec, Janet. Sorry, Janet's got her.
Okay, go ahead, Janet. I can talk about. I'll talk. Go ahead, Janet.
Janet, we can't hear you. You're muted. Still muted. There you go. Well, darn it, we still can't hear her. Janet, we still can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Janet. Nope. I can read your lips though.
Janet, do you have the little microphone at the bottom of your screen turned on?
There, she just muted herself, it looks like.
Yeah, it's muted again.
Now you're unmuted.
Oh, I think she's going to hang up and try to call back. Oh, darn it. We just still can't hear you, dear. Could you try to disconnect and come back? Okay, go ahead, Travis.
Okay. Let's see. I'll have to do it on paper, but
Yeah.
essentially, how would that? What if there were two incomes?
Yeah, and it troubles me because incomes change. I mean, people get new jobs, how would we even track that? So that's the biggest problem I have, is how we're even going to track that mutability of income. Janet, did that work?
Nope.
Oh,
Still nothing. We can see you.
yeah, everything on this end is clear for her. I can't figure out what's happening. And it looks like she's muting off and on, so you have the, try talking now. Oh, darn it. Oh, gosh. Janet, do you want me to call you on the phone so we can hear you? Oh, you tried to call me. I missed it. Let me call her, guys. Hold on. Let's see. Maybe we could just get her on the speakerphone. Janet, hi. Do you want to just talk?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you this way. Go ahead and talk. We're listening.
Well, I had a question. If Travis was able to receive the information on a current renter, what if you have a new renter coming in? Do you go by your set pricing and apply the formula in the same fashion?
Can you answer that, Travis?
Wait, aside, I'm not quite getting that question, Janet.
So you were asking with a tenant already there in the rental. And if you choose to take this grant, the formula is pretty easily determined because you have your established rent. And as Stephen pointed out, it's formulaic in that you cannot raise your rent more than what was the figure? 30%
Of the tenant's
of
income.
their income.
Right.
So that being the case, so my question is, with a new tenant, would you just go with your set pricing and apply the same formula? Basically asking if there's any difference in the rental pricing from an established tenant as opposed to a tenant moving in.
Oh, if you mean if somebody, if the tenant that if the tenant that receives the weatherization upgrade moves out and a new tenant a new tenant moves in, is there a rent raise restriction?
Does it maintain the same pricing set as the tenant that was housed with the grant in place? Say they move out and you get a new one. Would it be on a continuum?
Yeah, yes, I do. I believe so, because now they wouldn't, I think the numbers would change, because over a turnover, you legally would be allowed to raise the rent without a tenant in your house. And if you got a tenant to move in, I think you would then be stuck back with the restriction from the grant, which makes it so that you can't raise that.
Okay, so to clarify, Travis, as you know, September is the date in which landlords are able to use the COLA, the figure, to raise their rent annually. It's set by COLA, and I forget another number. It's typically under 10%, correct?
Yes, state of Oregon.
Okay, that being the given, if the tenant is out, so does this grant allow for that raise in addition, while respecting the 30% increase?
No.
Included as part of the 30%, or is that separate?
That from the grant side, it would be separate. I don't think we would ask that of a landlord. Yeah, this is for basically people already in the unit, and it would be,
right.
I think that's a really good point that we should add to the legal thing.
Yeah.
That if we do this work on, say, Travis's unit for a low income tenant, and then down the road that tenant moves out, I think that memorandum of understanding then is mute, because Travis is going to have to do renovations himself. He's going to have to put new flooring if the cat's peed on the floor or whatever. And then I think he should have the right to raise it however he needs in accordance to state requirement.
Yes.
Oh, yes. But then, I mean, I agree with part of that, but the other part of it is that that owner, even if the tenant, so is it the tenant that is receiving the MOU? Is it the tenant that's receiving the grant, or is it the homeowner on the tenant's behalf?
It's the homeowner on the tenant's behalf. And so that's what I mean. If that tenant moves out, then you're in a different ballpark then with a different tenant. Because that is not receiving the benefit of upgrades to make their experience living in your unit healthy or safe or energy efficient, right?
Oh, okay. So that's news to me, but okay.
I mean, that's how I see it, but Janet raises a very good point. I think we should put that, the board should look at that, and we'll make them, like they can decide if that should be part of our program procedure.
Because when I belonged to Rental Owners Association, it was encouraged of us as landlords to use that COLA rate in September and to raise the rent, because if you didn't or wouldn't, before too long, inflation and the cost of repairs would completely overwhelm the landlord in being able to address it. So Rental Owners Association actively encouraged landlords to utilize that COLA September raise. That was the only time of the year that landlords were, quote, allowed to utilize that cost of living, I guess, allowance. And so my question, what I think you answered it, is this grant does not disallow the landlord from utilizing that city council approved method for raising rent by landlords.
Yep.
No. No, it does.
Oh,
It does.
okay.
It does. That's the whole. This is the whole discussion of the MOU.
And
The
you
M-
have a good source that is clear on that.
Well, what I'm saying is, she's just presenting. This hasn't gone live yet, so she's presenting the idea that the lawyer has come to this has created this MOU, memorandum of
Yes.
understanding, which is basically a promise,
Memorandum of understanding.
right?
Yes.
Which is the promise that the landlord is saying, I won't raise the rent more than what was specified in the agreement.
Yes.
That is it. No, you don't get to say, well, but I also want to raise the rent, my city right, my state right.
Yes.
It's limiting you to the rent raise.
Right.
Okay. So Travis, knowing numbers, crunching them, which of the two is the greater, if not the lesser?
Well,
method?
that's what I was trying to establish with Stephen. When Stephen kind of cleared up, I was
Yeah.
confused at the beginning, but Stephen cleared up, and so that's where we're at in our conversation. Actually, is we're trying to see when you raised your hand. That's what we were talking about. We're trying to find, what I would like to see is a variety of real world workups of people with varieties of incomes, someone that makes $1,000 a month, someone that makes $1,500 a month, someone that makes $2,500 a month, and then
I agree.
a variety of different rental
Yes.
real world.
Applications, so you know the numbers, how they configure.
Well, put it this way: if a lawyer put it together under a percentage, I would count on that lawyer making it so it was never over the legal amount. So I think that whatever Doriandra has gotten created so far is not going to be conflicting with city or state law.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so where does that stand with the COLA raise in September, where the city allows landlords, is one able to do the MOU in conjunction with the other, or you choose one or the other?
Well-
Janet, I will just be really honest. I have not heard of what you're talking about ever. So
Okay.
I'm not the person to ask that.
Oh, you mean about the COLA that the city was allowing?
I don't think that exists. If it does, I would be shocked.
Well, it could be, because it's been 3 or 4 years since I've had any association with the city or ROA on this.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes in state law.
Okay. These are great points that everyone raised. But yeah, thank you, Janet. I'll get clear with the lawyer about that, but I think she's coming from a different angle. So, we had another topic, Travis, I'd love to get your brain about too. This grant in the deliverables doesn't, or I'm sorry, the expenditures that are compliant to the structure of the grant. Nowhere in there is a section that says, okay, if one of your units has such extensive work, like let's say, for example, mold remediation. My mom just went through this where she had to come stay with me because, you know, the mold remediation was what you had to be out of the house. So if we encounter something like this, my research on this end by calling different insurance agents and stuff like that shows that most policies have this ability to say, okay, I'm going to have to house my tenant elsewhere for a couple days while this work is being done. And then we would have the homeowner then would have to pull that part of the policy to relocate their tenant while we did mold abatement. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you think, or what do you do in those cases?
I've been pretty lucky with mold. I've never had like this famous black mold that a lot of tenants, I've got black mold. Well, you don't really have black mold. It's mildew and it's moisture. It's a lot of times it's moisture control issues. That
Right.
being, we're talking about leaving the fan on, leaving your bathroom door open after you take a shower, getting that moisture that are in moist rooms, kitchen, bathroom, into the rest of the house that is drier and kind of mixing that air up. And usually mold issues don't, actual mold, like black mold, the dangerous toxic mold, that generally they don't take hold. That being said, there are a lot of rundown houses in our community that do have black mold.
Right.
Houses that have aluminum windows that aren't well sealed, that have siding that has failed, that has black mold growing up underneath the siding that you can't even see and is coming through the sheetrock. These issues do exist. I've never been part of a situation like that. So I can't give you any advice in terms of a mold situation, or really even a housing situation from the kind of the insurance standpoint. I don't know. That can get messy in a hurry.
Yes. That's why
If I could ask a question, Doriandra, because I can't raise my hand. In the Pacific Northwest, moisture can be a real problem, especially in older homes that don't have the adequate ventilation, if not insulating properties in their home.
Yeah.
And when you go into a site, do you have someone that previews the home site, like a home inspector, that can troubleshoot and prioritize those repairs as deemed, or do you work solely with the tenant saying, I want new paint here and that, even though their home may be fairly dank and without the adequate ventilation? I had EWEB come, EWEB did a whole house and trying to figure out where to weatherize, and I think that ventilation would be a key entry level observation to be made by anyone undertaking the work, and then branch it down from there.
Yes, that's
and
yes.
I don't know if you're approaching the program that way, but I would strongly consider the ventilation because some of it is tenant
caused.
It's a tenant cause because
Correct.
they cut down on their heat. They don't open the bathroom doors, Travis pointed out. They refuse to turn on the fan to ventilate it. They're tenant caused, and with just a little homework or instruction, it could be as easy as that to solve.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I've put in our program policies, and this is something the board is going to review at our next board meeting, and everybody can weigh in. But that is exactly the procedure I've created. Is that our contractor is going to go in before anything happens, and they're going to do a healthy homes assessment. They're going to create a written report that comes back to us for review. And
Yes.
yeah, so that's how we're tackling this. And that,
And I hope you tier it both regarding health and safety in the home,
of course.
and kind of put a priority so there's an ongoing consistency within the program
Yes.
in meeting its goals.
Yes, exactly. That's the first step in the program policy, is
Okay.
that the Healthy Homes
Okay.
assessment is going to be primary start. And from there, if we find stuff that's like beyond our scope of work or needs to be handed off to a licensed mold remediator, all that stuff is going to get outlined first. So
Okay.
yep. Good thinking. Yep.
Not that this, well, this actually could happen, and I really hope it doesn't happen, but there is such a situation out there, and probably more than we would wish it to be true, that there are homes that people are living in within the Whitaker neighborhood and the rest of Eugene that are illegally that are illegal to be living in. Like,
Correct.
in other words,
Yeah.
you might run into a situation where you're dealing with just not just a person that doesn't have the money to fix their rental up, but a person that's been grossly negligent in keeping their home livable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it can have to do with the money factor, upkeep and stuff like that can have to do with that. But at a certain point, there are homes that I've been in that should not be offered for rentals. And technically, if they get turned into the city for the variety of livability factors that they're not meeting, they could get shut down. So what happens if you guys get into a situation where you're like, whoa, this is a remodel. This is a full blown, this is above our scope. What do you guys do?
Well, so in the program policy, I did that. I put a right of refusal of project based on that. And you bring a really valuable point, Travis, because I think if our contractor finds a situation like that, I think that our board would be completely supportive of us saying, then, okay, then we have to report this to the city. I mean, this is
Right.
like, to me, this feels like, if a therapist is working with a client and they hear of like child abuse, they are mandated to report that to a higher entity. And so I think we would need to do that.
Well, like
and
for as simple as if you go into a unit and they complain of it being, cold and probably lacking insulation, but then come to find out that none of the heaters actually work.
Right.
So instead
Right.
of actually upgrading their heaters, you're actually like installing a main system in the house that makes it a livable unit.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point. I mean,
Well, and two, Travis, like you point out, it would be kind of a waste of the grant to Band-Aid a house when it has gross compliance issues with the house overall. In other words, you're putting a little spot Band-Aid on a house that's could be structurally falling down literally, and you're putting a heat pump in there. To me, you'd want the structure to be sound before you go putting the grant money into a structure that may not be standing the next month.
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like I don't mean to be like negative, or not negative, but pessimistic, but the reality is I've worked on houses long enough that it depends on how wide reaching this grant gets out in the community, but you could really see things that you didn't think you were going to see. I mean, I've seen lots of stuff, and it's you can go in and be like, oh, you want a new heater, but you're you don't have a stove that works, or where's your refrigerator? Like,
Yeah.
So and then there was the stuff that I brought up a couple meetings ago of just you go to do your windows and find out it's a full blown, an entire, west wall that needs to be completely reframed and resited because it's actually rotten down to the bottom plate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you could get with 80 different homes or however many you guys end up being able to do upgrades to, you could get really, really lucky and not have any any deep dives like that. But there's times where I go to do something on a place that I feel like is well maintained, like maybe put in a new windowsill because the wood looks like it's starting to deteriorate, and you pull the windowsill out and you go, holy crap, like water has been getting in all the way in there for a long time, and you have no idea until you open it up.
Exactly. Yep. I'm sure we'll run into that. And again, in the program policy, that right of refusal, if it's too extensive or if we were talking about this earlier before you and Janet came on, Travis, was that the grant, some of these grant awardees went crazy on the application and just selected everything. And we did not do that, or I did not do that, simply based on the agreements and conversations I'd had with these two dedicated contractors. Like some of it was out of the scope of work. So if we find something like that and our contractor says, yes, it's out of the scope of our work, but we can go ahead and do it, then I have to take that back to our grant official and get permission to do it. So I don't want to get into that if we don't have to, but
Sure.
it's just, I think our board is going to have a lot of decisions to make as we go along, because we want to serve the largest group of people we can, but stay in our structure. So I think every new project is going to just be a case by case scenario. I just don't know. I mean, we have the oldest houses in the entire city here, so it's bound to happen.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a very interesting experiment that you guys are getting into.
It's like walking in the jungle.
Yes, I know.
It'll be very nuanced and very complex, and some will be easy and some will be I need someone that's pretty sharp. And then two, factor in the fact that a lot of these some are very impoverished living in, and by calling the state on them could add deeper to their problem sets. And I'd like it. I always like when there's a problem to offer a solution that can be viable for them. And I know I benefited. I don't know if the city still offers it, but they had a gentrification for old houses. It was federal monies. Oh, I shouldn't be talking about federal money right now.
Nope.
But some way to offer at least a half-baked solution for people, because that could lead them into dire straits,
Yeah.
knowing that they're living in a house and it's being turned to the code enforcement, and then they've got a whole new set of issues to deal with.
Yeah, that would be tragic, but
Unless it's a slumlord and they have the money, but they're just being ridiculous. Yes, they need to be turned in. But if it's someone in their little house and they're hanging on with all they can, that's a pretty hard reality to throw on someone.
It really is, Janet. And I think that in a case like that, say a tenant is in a situation like that, we are not working with the tenant directly, then it bounces to the landlord. And I think at that point,
Yes.
a landlord can say, no, I'm afraid that this is going to create dire straits for me just by, and
Yep.
So we'll probably, unfortunately, not be able to help people that are in those slumlord, I don't know, slumlord's a terrible term, but like
Yeah.
people that you've described that are just hanging on by a thread, and so they'll just probably say no. So anyway,
I'm just hoping that there's some foresight when you walk into this jungle.
yes, yes,
how to be professional in
exactly.
dealing with the people out there while being human.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to be a fine balance, but we'll do our best. I do want to say, since we're having trouble with the screens and all that, I would love it if everyone on this call, I'd like to send you guys my draft application, and I would so value feedback. In the coming days, I'll send those out in the morning if everyone's agreeable.
Sure.
That would be so helpful, especially Travis from your side, as a landlord, and that way all of us on this Public Health and Safety Committee can take a look at what I've got and give me your feedback, and then of course I'll refine it based on your advice, and then we'll be ready for our board meeting next week, for the board to take a look at it as well. So those are my next steps. But yeah, this has been a great call. I've got about 4 pages of notes and good points that I hadn't thought of. So I really appreciate you all being on tonight.
Yeah. So just to go back to one point that I was getting into, did the lawyer say anything about mixed families? So, or mixed households where it's not just a single tenant, and which is actually, it's more common as far as I know to have more than one person, more than one adult in a home. So do
Right.
they take each person's income and do
Yes.
an average of, okay.
Yes, exactly. The AMI index that I have for people to reference in the application you'll see tomorrow has, all types of different amounts of people in the household. And that's how we have to calculate it. Whoever's earning in the house, all that money gets pooled into one assessment. And again, it's like another can of worms there, because, if Joe loses his job, then that number changes. And so this is something that happened a lot when I was working on the OREM grant that we did, which was the rental assistance. Things would just change, like in the middle of the process, so-and-so just got another job, so-and-so lost a job. So it's really a hard line. For this grant, we have very strict data collection that I have to do. And so the way that I'm perceiving this is, at the time of influx, or at the time of application, whatever their influx is at that moment is what we'll go by. And as things change beyond that, we don't have capacity to monitor that. But it's kind of like the initial, what are y'all making this month? And then from there we assess. And
That makes sense.
yeah, it's a tough one, but yeah, I have to hold all these records and proof of incomes for 6 years, so luckily we have the cybersecurity policy now, so we'll just be, tracking it all, and I'll just be keeping it all safe. So it's a lot.
So, Toriandra, does this grant require you to track the race, ethnic, and all that to turn in at the end of the use of this grant?
It sure does, Janet. Yep, we're doing, I have to do a lot of complex data aggregate.
And is there an established number in meeting those figures set by this use of this grant?
Luckily, there's not.
In other words,
no.
Does it ask for 30% Caucasian, 20% this, or you
No.
just track it simply?
Exactly. It does not have that, thank goodness, or we would probably not be able to do this, because we're not a very color, we're
it's complicated enough without throwing that into,
any OH grant is going to demand, that aggregate data. And so, I have to track all of that. And frankly, it gets hard. I mean, during the OREM grant for the rental assistance, I had so much pushback from that. And many times, I'd be in the process of cutting the landlord a check and then still be, constricted with not having the data aggregate. It was very hard, but this time
Well,
it'll,
the information is usually voluntary, but if that's what you're speaking to, yeah, it could be because
Yeah.
some people don't want to participate in that kind of number count.
right.
But that shouldn't preclude them from not receiving the grant.
Exactly. And that's why
Yeah.
the survey that is being worked on by the OHA team and then
Yeah.
by me as we need for the specificity of our community has
Yeah.
all those options. I choose not to answer this question, but some of them are required. So we'll do the best we can there, but it's
Okay.
it's just.
Thank you for answering that.
Sure. All right, folks, we're coming up on 8. So any last thoughts or great advice or
I
questions?
just have a question. The
Sure.
emails, I had 2, and they're not always presented the timeline. I went in at 6:00 today to get in because I thought it was 6:00. In fact, I tried to get in clear up till 6:10. And then I went back in my Gmail and I saw in my Gmail, Whitaker had a meeting starting at 7. So I
Right.
tried again at 7 and it took me 10, 15 minutes. I'm beginning to think I'll take my Charlie Brown blanket and go home.
Travis kind of had that trouble tonight too with not sure.
Travis did too.
No,
Janet, the meeting's tomorrow.
yeah. So,
Yeah, it's tomorrow at 7. But interestingly enough, they send out the WCC sends me out these emails piggybacked on one another, and my little seasoned brain is going around in a circle, and I'm going, is it 6? Is it 7?
oh,
So I tried both to no avail.
Oh.
But
I'm sorry you had trouble. Yeah,
Yeah.
Our public health and safety agendas and meeting information will always come from me. And
Yeah.
and then Margaret will send the general meeting information and agenda from our WCC email. So that may help keep it straight. And I totally blew it. I was so excited to get Travis's input, but I forgot to include him in my email. So I was grateful he stumbled onto this one.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
Thanks, Thea.
So tonight, are there just 4 of us? Stephen, Travis, you, and I?
Well, we had Jen Shack and we also had Joanna DeFelicity, but both had to
Oh.
cut off.
So
Yeah.
it did meet a quorum.
Yeah, we had all the great minds here that we needed. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Good.
good.
Thank you.
Could I
Yeah.
give Stephen a 1-minute update about some digging I did regarding the Coos Bay line?
Yes, we'd love to hear that. Yes.
So I had the thought to call the Chamber of Commerce, and
Wow.
I looked through their webpage and I called 4 or 5 of them and left messages on their phone. And one of them, basically the small business liaison for the chamber, called me back. Her name was Tiffany. And Tiffany, in my half-an-hour conversation, said, Tiffany Edwards, who used to be on the planning commission and is now one of the heads of the Chamber of Commerce, Tiffany Edwards was just talking to Randy Groves about that. And I said, really? Well, it seems to me that the only people in Eugene that know about this increase in rail traffic must be Tiffany Edwards, Randy Groves, and the WCC, because nobody else has said anything or talked about it. I said, very interesting. Do you have any idea what they were talking about? And she said, well, if I could just kind of say it in a quick sentence, from what I understand, Randy Groves' take is that the city can't control the railroad. And I, since then, have been writing kind of hell-raising emails to the city of Eugene. I've incorporated Lindsay Leach in my most current past 2 weeks of emails. And Miss Marwitz, who is the head of the quiet zone situation. And I'm kind of becoming verbose and demanding that the city come clean. And from what I believe is happening, I don't know, I don't want to go down a conspiracy theory path, but I do wonder if the money that they set aside for that quiet zone is indeed still set aside and saved. I know they're having budget problems, or if that was able to be reallocated. I want to know if they've still got that in savings. And I want to know if the city of Eugene has reached out to Coos Bay Rail Line to discuss the fact that we, the city of Eugene and the Whitaker, have planned to put a quiet zone through the entirety of our downtown and Whitaker corridor. There is zero transparency coming out. Lindsay Leach acted like it was the first time she'd heard about it. Miss Marwitz, who you'd think would be the first person that knew something about it, claimed in multiple emails she never heard anything about it. And when Stephen had brought this up, I believe this was the second time I had heard about this Coos Bay line. Was that in October or November? Might have even been early December. I ended up emailing Marwitz and saying, "Hi, have you heard about this astronomical increase in rail traffic and noise that's proposed through our neighborhood?" And she said, "Oh, no, I have no idea what that's all about. I'm going to meet with ODOT at the end of the year and I'll get back to you." Well, I never heard from her. So I followed up late January and said, "Hi, it's me again. I'm not going to go away." And we want to know what's happening with this Coos Bay rail line that is proposed to go through our neighborhood. Anyway, I am still actively trying to gather information, but I thought Stephen might want to know that one avenue, if Stephen wants to follow an avenue I haven't followed, is writing an email to Randy Groves. Randy Groves is West Eugene counselor. He's very respondent. He will call you. He will write you an email. He might even meet up with you to discuss with you what he knows. And Randy Groves is a little different than a lot of the city in that he actually believes leveling with constituents and having a dialogue is okay. And so he'll take time out of his day. If you want to follow that lead, you can just simply say, I've heard that you may know something about this. And if he opens up, he opens up. Or I can continue down my path, but I think we need to start rattling the cages. Go ahead, Stephen. Sorry.
You should probably take the lead on it, as far as I'm concerned, or maybe Doriandra can talk to Margaret about taking the lead. I have a number of health issues that, yeah, Doriandra.
Doriandra, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, everybody was talking at once. Thank you, Janet. Got that. And then Stephen, we missed what you were saying because we couldn't. We were all talking at once.
I see. I was responding to what
Travis.
Travis was saying.
Okay.
Or suggesting. Yeah, I'm familiar with. I've never met Randy Grove, but I understand he was the fire chief. He would definitely. He probably of all people knows what all the plaques on the side of all the black tanks that go through in trains actually means. He probably knows how much hazardous materials is coming through downtown. Also, I know the person that built his website when he first ran for city council, but I don't have any direct connection. I'm probably not the right person to take the lead on this.
That's okay. I just was simply throwing it out there if you wanted to gather I'm gathering for my own curiosity because I'm smelling something real bad.
Yes.
Yeah, we-
smelling something very bad. As soon as you guys said they reached out to you in particular, and then I haven't heard anything from any other city official except for, lo and behold, the Chamber of Commerce.
That's
I-
peculiar.
It's peculiar.
Yeah.
It's peculiar, and I don't like what all signs are pointing to, and what all signs are pointing to, judging by what what Tiffany told me, is that essentially the city's take is they can't control the railroad. That doesn't mean that they cannot advocate for our community. They can.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's so true. Would you be so kind, Travis, when you come to the general meeting tomorrow, if you can, at the top of the meeting, in that public comment, would you do a quick synopsis of this? Because we're going to have multiple nonprofit groups that are our partners speaking tomorrow, and this is a really important thing to spread. So if you can do that, it would be great. If not, we can find some time at the end of the meeting or something, but let's let everyone know tomorrow. And we should get off this meeting now because we're quite over, but
Okay.
this is great work you're doing, and I cannot express my gratitude enough that you're poking and
I'm poking. I don't know.
Good.
Now Lindsay Leach is on the she knows now, she knows, and she said
Okay.
that she also thinks that it's time for the city to level with us about what's happening with this quiet zone that I feel like they kind of want us to just kind of forget about.
Right. Good.
They do.
Yeah, we'll have city folks with us tomorrow too. So let's poke some more in a wider forum.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis.
You
All
bet.
right.
Thank
All
thank you guys.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
all. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.